The city was alive with noise, but for her, it was only silence. Bright lights flashed across the sky. Tall towers reached up like the claws of monsters. Ships came and went, their engines roaring like thunder. Crowds filled the streets, moving fast, never stopping, never caring. Everyone seemed to have a place, everyone seemed to belong. But not her. The alien girl stood under the shadow of a broken wall. Her thin cloak was wet from the rain. Her eyes, large and glowing faintly in the dark, searched the faces that passed by. None of them looked at her, not even once. To them, she was invisible. She had no one left. Her family was gone, taken by war. Her home was dust now, burned in the fire of battles she could not stop. The streets had been her only shelter for weeks. She ate scraps, drank dirty water, and slept under the cold sky. Her people had turned away from her. Even those of her own kind acted as if she was nothing. And tonight, she was weaker than ever. The rain had not stopped for 2 days. Hunger twisted her stomach. Her legs shook with every step. She pressed herself against the wall as if the stone could hold her up. Somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered, "How much longer can I last?" She tried not to cry. Tears would not help. Tears never helped. The crowd kept moving, full of life, but none of it was for her. Traders shouted, selling food she could not buy. Families laughed, holding bags of warm bread she could only smell. Soldiers marched past, their armor shining, but their eyes full of cold judgment. Her hands curled into fists. Why am I still here, she thought. Why am I still alive when no one wants me? Then she heard it. Footsteps. At first, she thought nothing, but then she noticed. These footsteps were different. They were steady, heavy, not part of the rushing crowd. They were behind her, following. Her heart began to race. She glanced over her shoulder. 3 shadows moved through the rain, coming closer. Her chest tightened. She knew this kind. Men who hunted the weak. Men who thought no one would care if a poor girl disappeared. She stepped away from the wall and hurried into the crowd. Maybe she could vanish between the people. Maybe she could lose them. But the footsteps grew louder. Her breathing quickened. She pushed past a vendor. She ran across the street, slipping in the mud. She turned into a narrow alley, heart hammering. The alley was dark, full of dripping pipes and broken crates. She pressed her back to the wall, holding her breath. The footsteps followed. Closer, closer. The 3 shadows entered the alley. Their faces were hidden, but their eyes shone like knives in the dark. One of them laughed. A low, cruel sound. "There she is," one said. "Small and alone," another whispered. "No one will miss her," the third added. Her legs trembled. Her chest rose and fell fast. She wanted to run, but there was nowhere left to go. The alley was a trap. Her mind screamed, "Is this the end? Will I die here like trash in the rain?" She pressed herself tighter against the wall. She wished she could vanish. She wished someone, anyone, would help, but she had no one. The men stepped closer, slow and confident, like hunters playing with their prey. Their shadows stretched long across the wet ground. The alien girl closed her eyes. She thought of her family, of the home that no longer existed. She thought of the little warmth she once knew. It all felt like a dream now, a memory that was fading into nothing. One of the men reached out a hand, and then a new sound cut through the alley. Another set of footsteps. Heavy, strong. The men froze. They turned. At the mouth of the alley stood a figure, taller than the rest, broad shoulders, a dark coat soaked by the rain. His face was shadowed, but his eyes burned with something sharp, something alive. The alien girl's breath caught. A human. He did not speak. He only looked at the men. His jaw tight, his hands curled into fists. The air seemed to grow heavy. The rain seemed to fall quieter. The men shifted uneasily. One of them growled, "This is not your business." The human stepped forward, one step, then another. The ground seemed to shake beneath his boots. The girl's heart pounded. She did not know him. She did not know why he was here. But something in the way he moved, something in the fire of his eyes told her one thing. For the first time in a long time, she was not completely alone. And yet fear clawed at her chest. Was he here to save her, or would he be the final hand that pushed her into the dark? The human did not rush. He walked forward with calm, steady steps, as if he had all the time in the world. Yet each step carried a weight that filled the alley with silence. The 3 men who had cornered the alien girl shifted, their cruel grins fading. They were hunters, but something in this man's eyes made them hesitate. The rain slid down his coat. His shadow stretched long, taller than any of theirs. He said nothing, and still his presence spoke louder than words. The alien girl pressed herself against the wall. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her glowing eyes fixed on him. She did not know if he was danger or safety. Humans were not trusted in this part of the city. Some were mercenaries, some were worse. One of the men tried to laugh, though his voice cracked. "Walk away, human. This is no concern of yours." The human stopped. For a long moment, he simply stared at them, his jaw tightened. The silence grew heavy, as if even the rain was waiting. Then, in a low, steady voice, he spoke. "She is not yours." The words were simple, but they cut like a blade. The men looked at each other, uncertain. "What do you care? She's nothing, just a street rat." The human's eyes darkened. "No one is nothing." The alien girl's heart thudded hard. Those words struck her deeper than she expected. No one is nothing. She had never heard anyone say that before, not since her family was gone. The man in front growled, anger flashing. "You want her? Then fight for her!" He pulled a blade from his belt. The other two followed, their weapons shining under the dim light. The human did not flinch. He rolled his shoulders, then stepped closer, fists curling tight. His hands were scarred, rough, hands that had seen too many battles. The alien girl pressed a hand over her mouth. She could hardly breathe. Was he really going to fight 3 armed men, alone? The first attacker rushed. His blade flashed through the rain. The human moved quick, like a storm breaking free. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisted hard, and the blade fell to the ground with a clang. A fist followed, striking the attacker's chest. The man collapsed, gasping for air. The second came from behind. The human spun, his elbow slamming into the man's jaw. A sharp crack echoed through the alley. The second attacker stumbled back, blood mixing with rain. The third hesitated, fear flickering in his eyes. He raised his weapon, but his hands shook. The human's gaze burned into him. "Leave!" The man dropped his blade and ran, splashing through the puddles until his shadow vanished into the streets. The alley fell quiet again, except for the rain. 2 attackers groaned on the ground. The human stood tall, chest rising steady, his breath calm despite the fight. The alien girl could not move. Her glowing eyes stayed locked on him. She had seen soldiers fight before. She had seen mercenaries crush enemies without mercy. But this felt different. This man fought not for greed, not for cruelty, but for her. He turned his head slowly and looked at her. Her body tensed. She wanted to step back, but the wall was already at her back. His eyes were sharp, yes, but not cold. They carried something else, something she had not seen in a long time. Kindness. He walked closer, not fast, not threatening. When he reached her, he stopped just far enough so she did not feel trapped. He reached out one hand, open, steady, waiting. She stared at it. Her fingers twitched, but she did not move. Why? Why was he helping her? He was human. She was alien. They were strangers. In this city, no one cared for anyone. And yet here he was, offering his hand as if it meant something. Her voice trembled when she spoke. Why? It was the first word she had spoken aloud in days. The human's face softened. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. Because no one should stand alone in the rain. The words wrapped around her heart like warmth she had forgotten. Her throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, but doubt clawed inside her. Was this real, or just another trick? The human lowered his hand slightly, giving her space to decide. He did not push. He did not demand. He only waited. For a long moment, the world was silent again. Just the rain, just the shadows, just her racing heartbeat. Finally, her hand lifted, shaking, small, hesitant. She placed it in his. His grip was firm, warm, steady. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. The human gave a slight nod. "Come on," he said. "You don't belong out here." He turned, still holding her hand, and guided her out of the alley. The attackers lay behind them, groaning in the shadows, too broken to follow. The city lights glowed ahead, harsh but alive. The alien girl walked beside him, her steps unsteady, her heart unsure. She did not know who he was or where he would take her. She did not even know his name. But for the first time since her world had fallen apart, she was not walking alone. And that was enough to make her wonder, could this stranger be the one who changes everything? The human led her through the crowded streets, his steps steady, his grip firm but not harsh. The Iron girl followed, her glowing eyes darting left and right, afraid the hunters might return. But no one came. The city kept moving as if nothing had happened. Traders shouted, machines roared, families laughed. And in the middle of it all, she walked beside a stranger who had just saved her life. Rain poured harder, cold and merciless. The human pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders. Then, without a word, he shifted it and draped half of it over her small frame. The fabric was heavy, smelling of smoke and iron, but it was warm. She froze, surprised by the simple kindness. No one had shared warmth with her since her family was alive. They left the bright streets behind and moved into quieter paths. Broken lamps flickered above narrow alleys. Water dripped from pipes, echoing through the dark. The girl's legs trembled with each step. Hunger gnawed at her. Every bone in her body screamed for rest. Almost there, the human said, his voice calm, steady, like stone that would not break. At last, he stopped in front of a rusted door set into the side of a worn building. It looked abandoned. No lights, no signs, just a place forgotten by the world. He pushed the door open with a creak and guided her inside. The air was warmer, smelling faintly of wood smoke. It was a small room, lit by the soft glow of an old lantern. A table stood in the middle, scratched and broken at the edges. A bedroll lay in one corner. On the wall, a jacket and a pack hung neatly, as if this was not just a shelter, but a home. The human closed the door and set the lantern brighter. The rain outside faded to a distant hum. For the first time in weeks, the alien girl was out of the storm. She stood still, her hands clutching the edges of his coat that hung over her shoulders. Her glowing eyes swept across the room. It was simple, small, but it felt safe. The human pulled off his boots and set them aside. He walked to a metal box in the corner, opened it, and brought out a small packet. He placed it on the table, poured water from a jug, and soon steam rose into the air. The smell of food drifted through the room. Her stomach growled loudly. She froze, embarrassed, but the human only gave a small smile. "Sit," he said, pointing to the chair. She hesitated, then slowly sat down. The chair creaked under her light weight. She kept her eyes on him, waiting for some trick, some demand, but he only set a bowl in front of her. "Eat," he said simply. The steam rose from the broth, filling her nose with warmth she had almost forgotten. She picked up the spoon with shaking hands. For a moment, she just stared at it. Was this real, or was it some cruel dream? Then she tasted it. The warmth spread through her chest, chasing away the cold that had lived there for too long. She ate fast, afraid it might be taken away. The human said nothing, only watched with quiet eyes. When she finished, she lowered the spoon, her hands trembling. "More?" he asked. She blinked at him, unsure if he was serious. Then she shook her head quickly. "No, thank you." Her voice was barely a whisper. The human nodded and sat across from her. For a long time, there was only silence. The lantern flickered. Rain tapped on the roof. She shifted uncomfortably, her heart beating fast. Finally, she spoke. "Why?" The human tilted his head slightly. "Why what? Why help me?" Her glowing eyes fixed on him. "I am nothing to you, just a stranger, just broken." He leaned back in his chair. His face was hard, but his voice was gentle. "Because I know what it's like." Her brow furrowed. "Like what?" "To lose everything." The words hung heavy between them. She searched his face, but he did not look away. His eyes held shadows, the kind that only came from pain too deep to heal. Her throat tightened. For a moment, she saw him not as a strong stranger, but as someone like her, someone carrying ghosts. Silence again. This time it was not heavy, but shalwa. At last he stood and moved to the bedroll. He pulled out a spare blanket and set it on the table. "You can rest here tonight," he said. She hesitated. Her body longed to collapse, to sink into the warmth, but her heart screamed to stay alert. Trust was dangerous. Trust was a knife in the dark. Still, when she touched the blanket, it was soft, real. The human turned away, giving her space. He sat on the floor, back against the wall, arms crossed. His eyes closed, but she could tell he was not truly asleep. She curled into the blanket. Her body trembled less now. Her eyelids grew heavy. As sleep pulled her down, one thought burned in her mind. Maybe, just maybe, I am not as alone as I thought. And in the quiet shelter, with the storm outside raging on, for the first time since her world fell apart, the alien girl dreamed without fear. The storm raged through the night, rain hammering against the roof, wind howling like a beast outside. But inside the small shelter, it was quiet. The lantern's glow softened the room. The human sat against the wall, eyes half closed, always alert. The alien girl lay curled under the blanket, her breathing uneven, her glowing eyes opening and closing as sleep fought with fear. She wanted to trust this place. She wanted to believe she was safe. But years of pain did not vanish in a single night. Every sound outside made her flinch. Every shadow on the wall made her heart jump. Still, the warmth of the blanket, the memory of food in her stomach, and the steady presence of the human nearby, it was enough to keep her from breaking. When dawn came, pale light spilled through the cracks of the window. The storm had passed, leaving the streets wet and shining. The human rose first, his movements quiet, practiced. He poured water into a small basin and washed his face. Then he pulled out supplies from his pack, bandages, a knife, He dried food. The alien girl watched from the blanket, her head peeking out like a wary animal. Her eyes followed his every move. Finally, she spoke, her voice hoarse. "You live here." The human glanced at her. "For now," he said simply. "Why here? This place is empty, forgotten." He shrugged. Sometimes forgotten places are safer than crowded ones. Her glowing eyes lingered on him. She wanted to ask more, but fear pressed against her tongue. Words were heavy. Trust was dangerous. Still, something pushed her forward. "Who are you?" she asked. The human paused, then sat down across from her. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, "A man who has lost too much." Her chest tightened. She pulled the blanket closer. She wanted to turn away, but curiosity burned stronger than fear. "What did you lose?" The human's eyes darkened, his jaw clenched. He looked at his scarred hands before answering. "Family, friends, a place to call home." His voice was steady, but underneath, it carried weight, as if each word was a stone dropped into a deep well. The alien girl swallowed hard. She knew that pain. She lived in it every day. Quiet filled the room again, broken only by the dripping sound outside. She lowered her eyes, her voice trembling. "Me too." The human looked at her, his gaze softer now. He did not press her. He only waited. Her fingers clutched the blanket. The memories clawed at her chest. She hated speaking them, hated bringing the past back, but something about his silence pulled the truth out of her. "My home burned," she whispered. "Soldiers came. I was small. I hid. My family didn't make it." Her glowing eyes dimmed, filled with shadows. "After that, no one wanted me. Not my people. Not anyone. I became nothing." Her voice cracked at the last word. She turned her face away, ashamed. But the human leaned forward. His voice was low, firm, but not cruel. "You are not nothing." The words hit her chest like a spark. She looked at him, eyes wide. "You don't know me." "I don't have to," he said. "No one who survives what you've survived is nothing." Her throat tightened. She wanted to argue, but her voice broke before she could. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and painful. She buried her face in the blanket, trying to hide them. The human did not move closer. He did not touch her. He only sat there, watching quietly, letting her cry. Minutes passed. The storm inside her slowed. Her breathing steadied. She lifted her face again, cheeks wet, eyes glowing faintly brighter. "Why do you care?" she whispered. The human looked at her for a long time, then finally answered, "Because I promised myself, if I ever saw someone drowning in the dark like I was, I wouldn't let them sink." The alien girl stared at him. She had no answer, no words, only silence. The lantern flickered. The room seemed smaller, closer. The walls that had once felt like safety now felt like they were holding in something deeper. Two lives broken, two hearts scarred, sitting in the same silence. Then, a knock shattered the quiet. The alien girl's body froze. Her glowing eyes widened in fear. The human's head snapped toward the door. His hand went to the knife on the table. The knock came again, harder this time. The girl whispered, her voice shaking. "They found me!" The human stood, his face turning to stone. "Stay here," he ordered softly. He stepped toward the door, silent as a predator. The girl curled deeper into the blanket, her heart slamming in her chest. The safe world she had just begun to believe in cracked apart again. The door creaked as the human placed his hand on it. For a moment, time seemed to hold still. The alien girl gripped the blanket with trembling hands. Would the world take her away again? And for the first time she prayed, not for herself, but for the stranger who had chosen to stand between her and the dark. The knock grew louder, 3 hard strikes echoing through the small shelter like a warning. "Gee." The alien girl's breath caught in her throat. She pressed her glowing eyes shut, wishing the sound away, but it came again, closer, sharper, like claws raking against the wood. The human stood by the door, knife in hand. His face was calm, but his body was tense, ready. He turned his head slightly, signaling her to stay quiet. She pulled the blanket over her mouth and held her breath. A voice called from outside, harsh, cold. "Open the door. We know she's inside." Her heart stopped. The hunters. She gripped the edge of the blanket until her fingers hurt. How had they found her? She had hidden in shadows, lived like a ghost. And yet somehow, the world always found her again. The human's eyes narrowed. He did not answer. The voice outside grew sharper. This is your only chance, human. Hand over the girl. She is marked. She is wanted. Do this, and you walk away free. The girl's whole body shook. She wanted to scream, "Don't open it. Don't let them in." But fear trapped her voice. She had seen it before. When strangers turned their backs, when neighbors betrayed her for a coin. Why should this human be different? The silence stretched. The rain outside slowed to a drizzle. Then the human spoke, his voice steady as stone. "No." The word hit like thunder. A pause followed, then laughter. Cruel, sharp. "Then you'll die with her." The door slammed open, splintering off its frame. 3 armed figures stormed inside, their weapons glinting in the lantern light. Their eyes locked on the girl, hungry, merciless. The human moved first. His knife flashed, striking the first attacker's arm. The weapon clattered to the floor. With a shove, he sent the man crashing into the table. The lantern shook, shadows leaping across the walls. The second attacker swung a baton, aiming for the human's head. He ducked, grabbed the man's wrist, and twisted until a sickening crack echoed in the room. The attacker screamed, dropping the baton. The third one pushed past, rushing straight for the girl. Her heart froze. She pressed back into the wall, her hands clutching the blanket as if it could shield her. The human saw. He threw his knife. It struck the third attacker's shoulder, sending him staggering before he could reach her. "Run!" the human shouted, but her legs refused to move. She was trapped between fear and shock, trembling like a cornered child. The first attacker rose again, grabbing a chair and swinging it. The human blocked with his arm, the wood splintering. Blood dripped from a fresh cut, but he did not fall. He struck back, fists like iron driving the man down again. The girl's glowing eyes widened as she watched. He fought not like a soldier for glory, not like a mercenary for pay. He fought like a man who had nothing left to lose, and yet everything to protect. The attackers regrouped, their faces twisted with rage. One spat blood onto the floor. "She's worth more than you know. Step aside. She isn't yours." The human's voice was a growl. "She is not yours either." They lunged together. The room shook with the struggle. Fists striking, wood breaking, blood mixing with rainwater dripping from the ceiling. The girl's ears rang with the sound of violence. She wanted to close her eyes, but she couldn't. She could not look away from the man who stood for her when no one else ever had. Finally, with one last strike, the human drove the second attacker into the wall. He crumpled to the ground. The other 2, battered and bleeding, staggered back toward the broken door. One spat again, hatred burning in his eyes. "This isn't over. She belongs to the world. You can't hide her forever." They fled into the wet streets, their shadows vanishing in the fog. The human stood in the wreckage, chest rising and falling hard. Blood ran down his arm, dripping onto the floor. His knife lay forgotten near the door. The alien girl finally found her voice. "You're hurt!" She stumbled forward, kneeling beside him. Her hands shook as she reached for his wound. "Why did you fight them? Why risk your life for me?" His eyes met hers, sharp but soft. "Because you are more than what they see." Her throat closed. Tears blurred her glowing eyes. No one had ever said that to her. To the world, she was nothing but a burden, a mark, a prize to be taken. But to him, she was someone worth bleeding for. She pressed her hands over his wound, trying to stop the blood. Her small voice trembled. "They won't stop. They'll keep coming." "I know," he said quietly, "but neither will I." Her chest ached with something she did not understand. Fear, hope, and something deeper, something dangerous. The storm outside had ended, but inside a new one had begun. She realized the truth then. The world hunted her. But for the first time, the world would have to face him too. The shelter was broken. The table lay in pieces, the door hung loose, and blood stained the floor. The human sat on the edge of the bedroll, his arm wrapped in a cloth that was already red. His face was pale, but his eyes were still steady, sharp like fire that refused to die. The alien girl sat close, pressing her glowing hands against his wound. Her small fingers shook, but she would not let go. She had never tried to heal anyone before. She had never cared enough to try. But now, with him bleeding in front of her, she felt something burning inside, a desperate need to keep him alive. "Hold still," she whispered. He gave a small, tired smile. "You're doing fine." Her chest tightened. She had never heard those words before. No one had ever told her she was doing fine. Minutes passed in silence. The storm outside had faded to a soft drizzle, but inside, the air was heavy with unspoken truths. Finally, she pulled her hands back. her eyes glowing brighter from the effort. The bleeding had slowed, but the wound was still deep. She bit her lip, tears welling. "I'm not enough. I can't fix this." The human shook his head. "You already did more than anyone else would." His voice was weak but strong enough too. "Oh, reach her." Her throat closed. She turned away, her heart breaking. Why does he fight for me? Why does he risk everything for someone like me? Then came a sound outside, distant, but clear. Boots. Many boots. The girl froze, her glowing eyes widening in fear. She crept to the window and peeked through the cracks, her breath caught. Soldiers. A full squad. Their armor shone under the gray morning light. They moved with precision, their weapons ready. They were not just hunters now, they were the law. "They've sent the army," she whispered, her voice shaking. The human pushed himself up with effort, his jaw tightened. "Then it's worse than I thought." She spun toward him. "You can't fight them. You're already hurt." He leaned against the wall, his breathing heavy but his eyes burning with resolve. "I won't hand you over." Her hands trembled. Fear rushed through her veins like fire. She had always run, always hidden, always let the world push her down. But this man, this stranger, was willing to stand against the world itself. For her. Her chest rose and fell fast. I could run now, she thought. If I leave, maybe they'll spare him. Maybe he'll live. But another voice inside screamed louder. If I leave, he'll die anyway, and I will be alone again. She looked at him, wounded, unshaken, waiting for her choice. Her breath came out in a whisper. I won't run. The human's eyes flicked to her. For a moment, surprise broke through his hardened face. Then a small smile touched his lips. Good. The boots outside grew louder. The door creaked as shadows fell across the broken frame. The girl stood taller, pulling the blanket from her shoulders. Her glowing eyes burned brighter than before. For the first time in her life, she felt something sharp inside her. Not fear, not despair, but strength. The soldiers called out, "Hand her over, human. She is wanted for crimes." Against the crown. Protecting her makes you guilty too. The human answered, his voice steady. Then I am guilty. The soldiers stormed in. The girl did not hide this time. She moved beside the human, her small hands lifting a broken piece of wood like a weapon. Her body shook, but she stood firm. The first soldier lunged. The human struck with his fist, knocking the man down despite his wound. Another raised his weapon at the girl, but she swung the wood, hitting his arm with surprising force. He stumbled back, shocked that she had fought at all. Adrenaline rushed through her veins. For the first time, she was not prey. She was not running. She was standing. The fight raged through the small room. Metal clashed, voices shouted. The girl ducked, swung, clawed, refusing to be taken. The human moved like a storm beside her, every strike fueled by sheer will. At last, the soldiers faltered. One shouted, "Fall back, we'll regroup." They dragged their injured comrades and retreated into the rain, vanishing into the fog. The shelter was wrecked, but quiet again. The girl dropped the wood, her chest heaving, her glowing eyes wide with shock. Her hands shook, but not from fear this time. From power. She turned to the human. He leaned against the wall, breathing hard, blood dripping again, but his eyes burned with pride. "You chose," he said softly. Her voice trembled. "I couldn't let you fight alone." He nodded slowly. "And you'll never have to again." Her throat closed and tears spilled from her eyes. But these were not the tears of despair. They were tears of something new. Hope. The world hunted her. The soldiers would come again, stronger, crueler. But for the first time in her life, she was ready to face it. Not as nothing, not as prey, but as someone who had chosen to stand, and beside her, a human who would bleed, break, and burn before letting her fall. Together, they had made a choice that would change everything. The shelter was no longer a home. The table lay in splinters. The lantern was broken. The door hung from one hinge, groaning with every push of the wind. Blood stained the floor where battles had been fought. And yet in the wreckage, two figures still stood, tired, battered, but unbroken. The alien girl leaned against the wall, her glowing eyes dim from exhaustion. Her small hands trembled, bruised from fighting, but she no longer felt like the weak child she once was. She had made her choice. She had stood beside him. The human sat on the bedroll, his arm wrapped tight in bandages that were already dark with blood. His breaths were heavy, but his eyes were calm, steady as ever. He had faced death yet again and lived. Silence filled the room. For a moment it felt like the world outside had gone still, holding its breath. Finally the girl whispered, "They'll come back." The human looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Yes. They won't stop." Her voice shook, not from fear, but from certainty. "They want me too much." His jaw tightened. "Then we won't stop either." The word struck deep inside her chest. She lowered her head, her glowing eyes shimmering. "Why? Why do this? You've lost so much already. Why risk the little you have left? For me?" The human's voice was soft but steady. "Because when I saw you standing alone in the rain, I saw myself, and I couldn't turn away." Her throat closed. Tears blurred her vision, hot and sharp. She turned her face away, ashamed of the weakness in her heart. "I don't deserve it. I don't deserve you." But before the tears could fall, he moved. Slowly, carefully, he reached out with his uninjured arm. His hand touched her shoulder, warm and steady. She froze, her breath caught, and then gently he pulled her closer. The girl stiffened at first, her mind screaming to resist. She had never been held since the night her family was taken. Every touch she had known after that was cruel, harsh, or cold. But this white as different. The human wrapped his arm around her and drew her against his chest. His coat smelled of smoke, rain, and iron, but beneath it was something she had never felt before: safety. Her glowing eyes widened as her body trembled. She wanted to break free, she wanted to run, but instead, slowly, she sank into him. The warmth of his embrace broke the walls she had built inside herself. Her hands clutched his shirt. Her tears fell freely now, soaking the cloth. She buried her face against him and let the pain pour out. The years of loneliness, the weight of grief, the endless fear. The human said nothing. He did not shush her. He did not let go. He only held her tighter, steady and unyielding, as if promising the universe itself that she would never be alone again. Minutes passed. The storm outside had moved on, leaving only a quiet drizzle. The broken shelter stood in silence, but inside, something new had been born. At last, her sobs slowed. Her glowing eyes dimmed to a soft, steady light. She pulled back slightly, just enough to look at him. Her voice was faint but clear. "What happens now?" The human's gaze was firm. "Now, we don't hide. We fight. Together." Her chest ached with both fear and fire. "The world is too big. We are too small." He gave a faint smile. Sometimes, the smallest sparks burn the brightest. Her lips trembled. For the first time, she believed him. She rested her head against his chest again, listening to the steady beat of his heart. It was strong, real, alive. And in that moment, she realized something she had never dared to believe. She was no longer nothing. She was someone. And she was no longer alone. The human's arm tightened around her, his voice low but unshakable. "They will come. They will hunt. But let them. They'll find us ready." The alien girl closed her eyes, her glowing light shining faintly against his chest. Her tears dried. Her trembling stopped. For the first time since her world burned, she slept, not in fear, not in hunger, but in his arms, and somewhere beyond. And the broken walls of the shelter, the galaxy turned, unaware that two broken souls had found each other. A girl who had lost everything, a man who had nothing left, and together, they had begun something the world could never have expected. The world still hunted her. The soldiers would return. But when they came, they would not find a weak child hiding in the shadows. They would find a spark, burning brighter than ever, held safe in the arms of a human who refused to let her go.